honourable gentleman, give me this. I will not tolerate such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I will order you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out.
The Supreme Court has just delivered a blow that could end Keir Starmer's career forever. In a ruling that has already been called historic, Britain's highest judges have ordered the Prime Minister to resign immediately after uncovering a £124,000 scandal that goes far deeper than anyone imagined. This is not just politics as usual. This is a full-blown constitutional earthquake that has left Westminster shaken, the Labour Party in turmoil, and the entire country bracing for what comes next. Tonight, Britain stands on the edge of the unknown. Will Starmer obey the court and walk away from power? Or will he defy the law and drag the nation into chaos? The answer will decide not only the fate of his premiership, but the very future of British democracy. The judgment was read in a tense courtroom, broadcast live across the country, and the words of Chief Justice Dame Sue Carr landed like thunder. No individual, not even the Prime Minister, is above the law. With that single sentence, Britain's political order was shattered. The Supreme Court did not just find irregularities, it laid bare a trail of deception, exposing how £124,000 mysteriously disappeared from Starmer's property records. Money that never appeared in tax filings, money that could no longer be explained away. But that was only the beginning. Investigators uncovered a series of undeclared gifts worth £39,000, luxury suits, rare wines, private jet flights, and even a gold Rolex. All funneled into Starmer's world by wealthy donors who expected something in return. The court's documents revealed not just a financial scandal, but a system of influence peddling and backroom deals that betrayed the very office he swore to protect. The reaction was instant. Crowds surged outside Parliament within minutes of the ruling, chanting "Resign now" and waving banners declaring Starmer unfit to lead. Inside Westminster, Labour MPs looked visibly shaken, some openly distancing themselves from the man who only months ago promised to restore integrity to politics. One backbencher called him a disgrace in a red tie, while others rushed to emergency meetings to discuss whether to trigger internal moves against their own leader. But the real shock came when Starmer himself stepped before the cameras. In a defiant, almost trembling statement, he declared the Supreme Court's ruling politically motivated and vowed to stay in office. That one moment of defiance has now turned a corruption scandal into a constitutional showdown, the likes of which Britain has not seen for centuries. Behind the headlines, the details are even darker. Forensic accountants revealed how Starmer's inner circle had hidden payments through shell companies in Jersey and the Isle of Man, tax havens he once publicly condemned. A single transaction stood out like a smoking gun. A £52,000 consulting fee wired from a shadowy firm tied to a defence contractor lobbying for government approval. There were no contracts, no invoices, just money moving in silence. To the court, it looked less like consulting and more like bribery. The hypocrisy was staggering. While Starmer had built his reputation attacking Tory ministers for financial misconduct, he himself was living in luxury on the generosity of billionaire donors. Leaked emails revealed one donor demanding policy changes in exchange for his support, and within weeks, regulations were mysteriously adjusted in that donor's favour. The court's language was brutal, calling it a betrayal of public trust so severe that it undermines the foundations of democracy itself. The crisis has spiralled beyond money. Whistleblowers from within Labour's own finance team came forward to describe a culture of fear inside the party machine. Staff were ordered to falsify expenses, shred incriminating documents, and never ask questions about unexplained funds. One aide admitted she was warned that if you question the money, you're gone. Most shocking of all, testimony revealed that government lawyers meant to serve the state, were allegedly deployed to threaten journalists digging into the Prime Minister's finances. This wasn't just corruption, it was a calculated effort to silence critics and hide the truth. For many, this crossed the line from scandal into something much darker, a deliberate assault on democracy itself. Now the walls are closing in from every side. Senior Labour figures are quietly urging Starmer to resign before the party completely implodes. Cabinet ministers are preparing letters of no confidence. Protesters are swelling in number, their chants echoing through Westminster, "Lock him up." Legal experts warn that contempt proceedings could begin within days if Starmer continues to defy the court's order. Some even suggest he could face criminal charges. What began as a financial scandal has transformed into a constitutional nightmare. Britain is entering uncharted territory, and for the first time in modern history, a sitting Prime Minister could be dragged from Downing Street by the force of law. The world is watching closely. International allies are expressing concern that Britain, once known for stability, is now teetering on the edge of political collapse. Financial markets are jittery, with the pound beginning to slide as uncertainty grips investors. Inside Whitehall, senior civil servants are openly debating whether they must begin operating under caretaker protocols, effectively ignoring orders from the Prime Minister himself. And in Buckingham Palace, advisers are said to be briefing King Charles on the ancient royal prerogative to dismiss a sitting Prime Minister, a power not used in nearly 200 years. The storm is building, and every hour brings Britain closer to a point of no return. This is no longer about a missing £124,000. It is about whether the rule of law can survive when the nation's leader stands accused of breaking it. And as the crowds grow louder, the court's ruling grows sharper and his own allies fall away. The question is no longer if Keir Starmer will fall, but how and how soon. The political earthquake that began with the Supreme Court's ruling has now cracked the very foundation of Britain's constitutional order. For the first time in centuries, the question is being asked openly: who truly governs the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister, the courts, or the Crown? In the hours since the judgment was delivered, the crisis has only deepened. Keir Starmer's refusal to resign has thrown the country into a constitutional freefall, and the institutions of state are beginning to fracture under the pressure. Behind the closed doors of Whitehall, senior civil servants are openly defying ministerial orders. One permanent secretary was overheard saying bluntly, "We serve the Crown, not a rogue administration." For a system built on unwritten conventions and mutual trust, this breakdown is nothing short of catastrophic. Inside Number 10, panic has set in. Advisors are resigning in real time, with one cabinet minister walking out during a live BBC interview, declaring Starmer a danger to democracy. Aides describe scenes of chaos, with documents being burned, frantic calls to donors for help, and emergency legal strategies drawn up in the dead of night. Starmer's closest allies are vanishing one by one, leaving him increasingly isolated. Yet he remains defiant, delivering late-night addresses accusing the courts, the Crown, and even his own party of plotting a coup. His words are desperate, his tone brittle, but his refusal to step aside is dragging Britain into an uncharted storm. The Supreme Court's order was unambiguous: resign immediately. Yet Starmer has responded with open defiance, instructing government lawyers to file an emergency injunction against the ruling. Legal experts have called this an act of war against Britain's constitutional order. Never before has a Prime Minister attempted to override the authority of the highest court. It is a move so reckless that scholars are comparing it to the darkest moments of history, when leaders placed themselves above the law. The court has now signalled it is prepared to escalate, with contempt proceedings looming. The threat is no longer just political disgrace, but imprisonment. A Prime Minister could soon find himself not in Downing Street, but in the dock. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace has been forced into the heart of the crisis. Behind the gilded gates, King Charles has cut short his Balmoral retreat and returned to London, summoning advisors and constitutional experts for emergency sessions. Palace insiders report that the monarch has been briefed on 3 extraordinary options. The first, deliver a private ultimatum through back channels, giving Starmer 48 hours to step down voluntarily. The second, publicly withdraw support during the state opening of Parliament, signalling that the Crown no longer recognises his legitimacy. The third, and most dramatic, would see the King address the nation directly, declaring the government unlawful and dismissing the Prime Minister under royal prerogative. Such a move has not been seen since 1834, but the fact it is even being discussed shows just how far the crisis has spiralled. In Westminster, the atmosphere is apocalyptic. The Lord Speaker has invoked rare emergency procedures to recall the House of Lords without government approval. Senior MPs are huddling across party lines, preparing contingency plans for a caretaker government should Starmer be forced out. Civil servants have quietly restricted access to nuclear codes, citing concerns over the Prime Minister's mental state. The armed forces are on silent alert, with generals privately warning the Defence Secretary they will not obey unlawful orders. Even the Church of England has broken its traditional neutrality, with the Archbishop of Canterbury declaring from the pulpit of Westminster Abbey that no leader is above God's law. Every institution of British life, from Parliament to the palace, from the courts to the military, is aligning against the man still clinging to number 10. The streets tell their own story. Tens of thousands of protesters have descended on London, erecting barricades outside Parliament and surrounding the Supreme Court with chants of "Resign now." The anger is raw, the chants deafening, and the banners unmistakable. "Lock him up." Police, already stretched thin, are struggling to contain the fury, while international media broadcasts the scenes worldwide. Britain, once a beacon of stability, is now being shown to the world as a democracy on the brink of collapse. The pound has plummeted to its lowest level since the 2008 financial crisis, and global markets are trembling. Foreign governments are drawing up contingency plans, with the United States State Department reportedly drafting lists of alternative contacts inside Britain, preparing for the possibility that Starmer's government collapses overnight. Starmer's isolation grows by the hour. 15 cabinet ministers have resigned. Over 60 Labour MPs have walked out. Donors are fleeing, accounts are being frozen, and the Bank of England has begun quietly monitoring suspicious transactions tied to the scandal. But the most damning blow may be the leaks still pouring out from inside his own party. Secret recordings have surfaced, allegedly capturing discussions within number 10 about suspending Parliament if the court ruled against him. Such a move, if true, would have amounted to an attempted coup against the very democracy he vowed to defend. The Supreme Court described this behaviour as a threat to the constitutional fabric of the nation. And yet Starmer does not move. He does not bend. Instead, he appears determined to fight until the bitter end, even if it means tearing Britain apart in the process. His latest address to the nation was defiant but hollow, delivered with trembling hands and eyes that betrayed the weight of collapse. "They want me gone because I threatened the establishment," he declared, even as the broadcast was live fact-checked on screen by the BBC. His words rang not as strength, but as desperation. With every passing moment, the noose tightens. The question is no longer whether he will fall, but whether his fall will take Britain with him. The nation now stands at the edge of a precipice, a Supreme Court ruling defied, a monarch preparing to intervene, a civil service in revolt, a military on alert, and a Prime Minister clinging to power as the system crumbles around him. The fate of British democracy hangs in the balance, and the next hours will decide if the United Kingdom can survive the storm or be consumed by it. What happened next inside the chamber left everyone stunned. Angela Rayner, who had entered with fiery confidence, suddenly found herself cornered. The questions from the committee were not just sharp, they were relentless, cutting through every layer of her defence. For a moment, the room grew silent, and then came the first blow. An MP demanded answers on her alleged misuse of power, the very issue the media had been circling for weeks. But instead of clarity, Rayner gave vague responses trying to laugh it off. That laughter, however, echoed like nervousness across the hall, and it was in that very moment that her opponents realised that they had the upper hand. The attacks did not stop there. One by one, MPs from her own benches began raising their eyebrows, shifting in their seats, whispering among themselves, and then the shocking twist came. It wasn't just the opposition tearing into Rayner, it was members from her own side. Her own colleagues, who once defended her fiercely, were now pressing her with impossible questions. Betrayal hung heavy in the air. The sense of humiliation was no longer subtle. It was written on her face. Viewers watching live could see her shifting uncomfortably, her once powerful voice trembling as she struggled to keep her ground. And then came the statement that shattered her composure. A senior MP leaned forward and asked her directly, "If you had nothing to hide, why have you avoided these questions for months?" The chamber erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even laughter followed. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of doubt on her face. For a leader who had built her reputation on being fearless and untouchable, this was the moment of collapse. The committee had cornered her, and there was no escape. Every word she spoke after that was drowned out by the storm of outrage. The humiliation became unbearable when the speaker himself intervened. Normally calm and restrained, he called out her evasions, demanding she give straightforward answers. That was the breaking point. If even the speaker could not protect her, then she was truly alone. The entire spectacle was broadcast live, with millions of viewers watching the collapse of a political figure who once claimed to be unshakable. In living rooms, offices, and even pubs across the UK, people whispered the same thing. Angela Rayner had been crushed, humiliated in front of the nation. Outside Parliament, the reaction was instant. Social media exploded. Hashtags calling for her resignation began trending within minutes. Commentators described it as the most brutal takedown of a sitting MP in years. Even neutral analysts admitted they had never seen such a public humiliation in the chamber. For her opponents, it was a victory. For her allies, it was a nightmare. And for the British public, it was a moment of revelation. The mask had slipped, and Angela Rayner's weakness had been exposed. But the story does not end there. Because in politics, humiliation is not just a moment, it's a turning point. And for Angela Rayner, this may not just be the worst day of her career, it may very well be the end of it. Whispers are already spreading that resignations, party reshuffles, and even a leadership challenge could be on the horizon. And if that happens, history will remember this day not as just another committee session, but as the day Angela Rayner's career was shattered before the entire nation. The most shocking moment came when the cameras captured Angela Rayner's expression, one that revealed the pressure building around her. For months, she had positioned herself as the iron-willed deputy, someone who would never bend under scrutiny. Yet here, under the glare of the committee, with members united in their sharp questions, she looked cornered. The room shifted, not in her favour, but against her. Every word she tried to deliver came back with double force, challenged, interrupted, or outright dismissed. For the first time, and Angela Rayner was no longer the one dominating the conversation. She was being dominated, crushed by the relentless fire of MPs who smelled blood in the water. As one member slammed the table demanding clarity on the alleged misuse of party funds, the atmosphere turned electric. The audience, journalists, aides, and political rivals leaned forward, sensing history in the making. This wasn't just another debate, it was a demolition. Angela Rayner's voice cracked, her tone faltered, and her carefully rehearsed defence collapsed under the weight of undeniable facts. Witnesses later said the silence in the chamber when she failed to answer was louder than the shouting that came before. It was the kind of silence that ends careers. One after another, MPs turned against her. These were not just opposition figures, but members from within her own party, those who once praised her blunt style and saw her as a fighter. Now they recoiled, unwilling to be dragged down by association. Betrayal echoed in every sentence. Rayner's allies were nowhere to be found. Many had already abandoned her before the debate began, sensing the storm. What was left was isolation, humiliation, and the realisation that the woman who once claimed to be unbreakable was standing alone. With no shield and no way out. The committee chair's words cut like a blade. This is not about politics, this is about honesty. And today, Ms. Rayner, you have failed to provide it. That line was repeated across every news outlet within minutes. Commentators called it the single most devastating moment of her career. Social media erupted with clips of her looking stunned, unable to respond. Her silence broadcast to millions. For someone who built her entire image on being outspoken, this was the ultimate humiliation. But what came after was even worse. Leaked whispers spread across the chamber, hinting at further investigations, not just into her office, but into the shadowy financial dealings linked to senior Labour figures. The storm that began with her humiliation now threatened to engulf the entire party. Some MPs demanded her resignation on the spot. Others went further, suggesting criminal inquiries could not be ruled out. The Labour Party, already under pressure from scandals and collapsing public trust, had just watched one of its most prominent figures disintegrate live, and the consequences were nuclear. Angela Rayner attempted to regain control. She raised her voice, tried to deliver a fiery speech to remind everyone why she had risen so far, so fast. But it was too late. Every sentence sounded hollow. Every word fell flat. The once cheering supporters stayed silent. The cameras unforgivingly zoomed in on her breaking composure, and the headlines practically wrote themselves. Angela Rayner humiliated in Parliament. She had not just lost the argument, she had lost the image of strength she built her entire career upon. In politics, perception is power, and perception had just turned against her. Overnight, the whispers of Rayner as future leader were replaced with calls for her to step down. Commentators said she looked defeated, broken in spirit. And while her team scrambled to spin the disaster as nothing more than a heated debate, the truth was undeniable. What the public saw was a crushing defeat broadcast live with no escape and no second chances. This wasn't just a bad day in Parliament, it was a turning point. For Angela Rayner, it was the moment where her reputation crumbled in real time under the watchful eyes of millions. And for Labour, it marked the beginning of a deeper crisis. The party had fractured on live television, its divisions exposed, its leadership humiliated, and its credibility shattered. The echo of that committee debate will not fade quickly. It will define Angela Rayner for years to come. The humiliation wasn't just political, it was personal. Her rise had been built on fire, confidence, and defiance. Her fall came with silence, betrayal, and exposure. And the cruel truth of politics is that once the mask cracks, it never fully repairs.